We've just left the decade which many dubbed the noughties behind, but what should the next 10 years be called? There have been plenty of suggestions, including the 2010s, the 10s and the teenies. Let's hear what some of you think the next decade should be named.
Oh, the 2010s, definitely.
2010s? I like the Deckers.
No, we like no, Ben and I were talking about it, 2010s.
Deckers.
Decker sounds pretty good.
Yeah?
Yeah,
Why is that?
bit catchy for me anyway.
I'd go with the 10s.
The 10s?
Yeah.
You think that's a catchy one?
I think I think it'll catch on.
Tweens, I think.
The tweens?
Yep.
Do you like the tweens? Why do you think the tweens are good?
I don't know, something a bit different.
OK, Susie Dent is Countdown's dictionary expert, and she joins me along with Piers Fletcher, who is a producer and the chief question wrangler from the programme QI. Very good morning. Is that on your CV, Piers?
It was for a while, yes.
Chief question wrangler. Well, Happy New Year to you both, and thanks very much indeed for joining me this morning. Piers, just have to clarify that we're calling this a new decade, but officially, are we in a new decade?
Well, I think you'd have to be one really special pedant to say that we're not. And by that logic, you'd say that the year 1990 was not in the 1990s, which is absurd. So I think we can call this a new decade.
OK, good.
I'm happy with that.
OK, we've got that cleared up, and that's official as far as I'm concerned. Susie, tell us about the noughties, because still, to me, it sounds kind of odd, calling the last decade the noughties.
I know, actually my favourite nickname for the decade that's just passed is the uh-ohs, which I think was lovely, it's like a numerical nickname. But yeah, the noughties didn't really sort of fix until probably 2008, in fact. So it's quite interesting that it was applied retrospectively. Yeah. So I guess a decade has to prove itself, although Piers and I were saying we haven't been especially naughty, in fact anything but. So that was purely a sort of linguistically, you know, nice sounding nickname. But
do you think, Piers, I mean, that exactly that point, the naughty sounded a bit cheeky, so perhaps people didn't want to pick up on it, but then they realised the decade was slipping past and had to call it something?
Yeah.
Well, I don't think anyone really worries about it during the decade. It's something we look at in retrospect, isn't it? And we probably won't call this decade anything at all, I'm afraid, to shoot your fox, until 10 years' time, when they'll be running articles in the papers about what happened in the last decade, and by then it'll be 2019, we'll be calling it the teens.
OK. You think that's the most likely?
Well, yeah, I'm coming round to that view.
The teens of the 21st century?
Yeah, perhaps.
So when something happens in 2015, it'll be, the mid-teens.
And but the other thing is, of course, if you look back at the 20th century, they didn't call the corresponding decade anything. But there was a war going on in that decade, and I dare say they called it the war. And maybe we'll have some, we'll be calling it the floodies, or the disasteries.
So it might be defined by events,
yeah,
rather than given a name. Susie, apparently competition in Australia awarded the prize to the Wonder Years.
Yes, I'm not that keen on that one, I have to say.
One spelt O-N-E.
Yeah, I suppose because at the moment it feels like they might be anything but the Wonder Years. I've heard some nice ones as well, like the tenterhooks, or the sort of try and encapsulate with the sort of uncertainty that we're facing with. But the 2010s to me sounds quite American. It's the sort of 24/7 element. But I think Piers is right. It'll be a while before something really settles.
And in a recent survey of 5,000 Brits, the most popular choice of name over here was the 2010s, beating off competition from the teenies, the tenties and the tenors.
I think the tenties have got an outside chance.
Do you? OK.
The tenties?
Don't you think?
It's just a made up...
The tenties.
Well, I suppose it's all kind of
I hope it'll be an exceptional decade. It'll be like the swinging 60s, the roaring 20s. We'll find something that really kind of gives it some oomph, and it'll be a better decade that we can look back on.
Does it matter at all?
No.
No.
Is it just a talking point? Or is there something?
It's a filler item.
Is there... What, on New Year's Day?
No.
Yeah, don't put that past us. Do you think that it's important for us to label decades now, or label years?
One of the funny things is that
now?
decades don't fit into these... The 60s really started in 1963, as Philip Larkin pointed out, and went on till about 1974. So, do you know what I mean? So, JFK assassinated in 1963, Beatles album 1963, ending with the withdrawal from Vietnam or something like that. And so the maths doesn't necessarily tie in with the zeitgeist.
No. History's not that tidy, I think that's right.
No, and because if it was, then the noughties would have been quite naughty.
Yes, that would have been lovely had they been. But, they've been thrifties, really, haven't they?
Yeah.
And the war on terror and all those things, you know, that's what people will think of as characterising this first decade.
Yes. And you being chief question wrangler on QI, I mean, all these things are important because they form the basis of all sorts of things you ask people.
If we can get a laugh out of it, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
OK,
right.
well, where are the laughs then?
Well,
Yes,
I was
good
hoping to
question.
pick something up this morning. This is a research trip for me.
Is it?
Yeah.
OK. Oh, well, Susie and Piers, thanks ever so much for joining us. Lovely to talk to you. Where did you finally come down, Susie, on what are you going to call it?
I just hope straightforward 2010s. To me, it's simple. But I
2010s.
hope that we do get some sort of nickname like the Roaring Twenties. But we'll have to prove ourselves first.
Yes, and you're going for
I'm
a
going with-
defining event.
A defining event, and if there isn't one, the teens, but not for 9 or 10 years.
OK. Lovely to talk to you both. Happy New Year.
Happy New
Happy New Year to
Thanks
you
very
too.
much
Thank
indeed.
you.
Right.